So on the latest episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, I'm joined again by Leslie Ballard, and we're going to talk about the song Mountains, the first song that kicks off side B in the Parade album. And if I'm speaking personally, it's my favorite song on the entire album in general. So I'm excited to really talk about this song with you, Leslie. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm excited too, and it's one of my two favorite. I can't choose one favorite on Parade, but yeah, it's up there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great songs in it, but if somebody was forcing me, like held a gun to my head and say, pick one song off the album, That's it. I would probably pick Mountains, just because I think the groove is so infectious. I love the music. I love the melody. And to be quite honest, the lyrics are something I've never really put a lot of thought into.
Mm.
So I'm pretty excited to discuss the lyrics with you because there's not a lot of them, but the chorus is very memorable, easy to sing along to. It's only mountains, but all the other words in the verses, I've heard them. I've comprehended them, but I've never really thought too much about them.
Yeah.
So this is something that is going to be kind of a learning experience for me to get somebody else's opinion on what Prince is trying to convey in this song. In terms of the song's presence in the movie Under the Cherry Moon, it's kind of widely known as the closing credits song. So I love its placement in the film for that, because how the movie ends is it has originally this downbeat tone, because spoiler alert, Christopher Tracy dies at the end of Under the Cherry Moon. But there's some happy endings for Tricky and Mary, and so there's some happiness going on there. And then you've got the scene where it shows Prince, and I assume he's Prince now. He's not Christopher Tracy anymore. But if you're watching the film, you can believe it's Christopher Tracy up in heaven singing this song with this band, which of course is the Revolution, the expanded version of the Revolution. And you're treated to this song in its entirety in the closing credits, which is a great placement for it, because a lot of the other songs you just get pieces of, right? Like in the film, you just get a little snippet of this song, a little snippet of that song. But you get the whole thing for Mountains, and that's awesome, because Mountains is great. So I like its placement in the film because you get the whole thing.
I agree. It's one of my favorite Prince videos too.
Yeah, it's so
fun.
It's so fun. And then, like I said, it's the extended version of the Revolution. So you've got Miko, you've got Eric in Atlanta, you've got the dancers, Wally and Jerome and Brooks. So it's not the Revolution that we all saw and got used to with Purple Rain, but it's like a bigger, expanded version of it to kind of mimic the sound and style that Prince was putting out there with the Parade album. So it totally fits. It was a single. It was the album's second single after Kiss. And while it didn't quite cross over in the same way that Kiss did, it didn't make the top 10 on the pop charts, it still did okay. It was, made it to number 20 something or in the pop chart, which is completely respectable. But considering that it was the second single from the album, that wasn't quite probably the hope that the record label had for this song. And it kind of is similar in almost same way that the second single on Around the World a Day, although Pop Life did better than Mountains, but it just wasn't quite the same, where he had multiple number ones like he did on Purple Rain, or multiple top 10 songs like he did on 1999. So I think it should have done better on the charts, but I'm just, it's really kind of a moot point in 2021 talking about the pop charts from 1986 and Mountain's placement from a historical context. But it does. I wish this was considered one of, his big hits because I love it so much, I guess.
You know, it's funny. I've heard people actually refer to this as a deep cut, which I laugh at. I mean, you probably would too, as
Yeah.
hardcore fan. But I mean, to the casual fan, I guess it might be. But I think about too, if Under the Cherry Moon had done better, maybe this song would have been more mainstream.
Oh yeah, for sure.
To have it push it,
Yeah. Considering, like I said, it was in the ending credits and
Right.
you got to hear the whole thing. If Under the Cherry Moon was a smash, yeah, I don't see how there was any way that this wouldn't have been a top 10 hit. And yeah, to call it a deep cut, I guess it just depends on your perspective. It depends on
Right.
how much of his career you know. I'm trying to think, did Mountains even make it onto the hits and B-sides collection?
I don't think so.
Say no, yeah. And so that didn't help its cause because, it sold well. That collection sold well. And that was really kind of aimed at the more casual fan, somebody who just didn't care about the albums, just wanted a collection of all of Prince's greatest hits from 70s and 80s and early 90s. And to not put this on there just kind of tells us as, the hardcore fan, as you mentioned, that this song wasn't that highly regarded by the record label, at least. And like, we could put it on there, but let's throw on Soft and Wet just to, as a representation of Prince's early work, something that didn't do as well on the charts, but means more from, like I said, a historical context because it was his first quote unquote hit. So
Right.
I get it. I get why they didn't put it on there, but it didn't help this song become as well known as it should have or could have been. It also is kind of notable, as it is officially the last single with Prince and the Revolution that charted. I mean, it wasn't their last single because there was one more single that was released off this album, and this is a Prince and the Revolution album, but it was the very last Prince and the Revolution song to chart on the Billboard Top 100. So it is what it is. It's just kind of like one of those footnotes. Like if anybody asks you on Prince Trivia Night, what was the last Prince and the Revolution song to hit top 40?
Chart.
Yeah, the answer is Mountains. So there you go.
I think it wasn't the first time we hear Atlanta Bliss on recording with Prince as well.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
You got it. That's another kind of little trivia piece that should belong when we're talking about this song. In terms of credits, Wendy and Lisa are credited with a lot of, writing of the music. Prince is credited primarily with the lyrics. Their vocals are interspersed throughout the song very memorably, like they often are in the Revolution era. All three of them sing in the chorus, and you've got the call and response, kind of pseudo call and response towards the end of the song, which I love. So I just like this song so much for all of those reasons, for its groove, for its collaborative feel. It's just one of those songs that I never get tired of. And I can't say that about every Prince song, but I think it's just because it didn't get overplayed so much in my youth that now when I hear it, I don't have 40, 35 years worth of plays on this song. I mean, I didn't, and hearing it on the radio all the time. So it still seems fresh to me. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say with that.
Yeah, and like you and I were messaging earlier this morning, I guess 5 years ago on Facebook, I posted, if you need a mood boost to pick me up, then, listen to Elephants and Flowers followed by Mountains. Like this song always puts me in a fantastic mood. Love it. I love it on my running playlist. Like it just always, like I said, it picks me up. Yeah,
it's great. The album version is not that long. It's just over 3 minutes long. Pretty standard pop song length. But like a lot of great 12-inch singles, there is an extended version of the song that breaches the 10-minute mark. And, a 10-minute Prince song is not an anomaly. There's plenty of them out there, whether they're remixes, whether they're just album songs that extend past the 10-minute mark. I mean, America from Around the World in a Day is a famous example of a Prince jam going well into into the 20-minute mark. So 10 minutes seems kind of short. And I'm like, oh, okay, 10-minute, 12-inch mix. That's like normal length for a Prince 12-inch. So, and it's mostly groove too. I mean, there's really no additional lyrics to speak of on the 12-inch of Mountains, which other 12-inch singles oftentimes have additional lyrics that can be spoken about or interpreted or dissected, but not Mountains. It's mostly just additional groove, which is cool because it's a great one.
Can't go wrong with additional groove.
No, not when it's as good as Mountains' groove. No, absolutely. So yeah, you had mentioned, Leslie, that this is one of your personal favorites on the album, and I think when you kind of pull like the hardcore Prince fans, they will certainly this gets listed a lot. We're not alone in our enjoyment of this song, in our feeling that this is a really, really strong song, strong single, strong album track, whatever you want to call it. I know I can think of many people I've talked to over the years that really highly regard this song, but in terms of the lyrics, this is where I want to start getting into it, because
yeah,
I I don't want to call them inscrutable, but for me they kind of borderline in that, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean, like, I think they can just be interpreted so many different ways. It's hard to really pin them down, which isn't a bad thing. It's just one of those kind of frustrating things for somebody like me who's got a podcast to kind of dissect Prince lyrics. And I just, like, if I did this episode by myself, I would feel like I would have to poll a bunch of people to get different opinions, because I feel like you and I could do this show today and come up with, some theories about what he's talking about, and I could pull in somebody else tomorrow and we could have a completely different conversation. That's how open-ended I feel like these lyrics are. I don't know. Do you kind of feel the same way, or do you really feel like it's kind of about this one thing, and that's what it is?
Like the second verse, which obviously we'll get to in a little while. I've always had an image in my mind of exactly what it refers to, but obviously I never asked Prince. So
right. Right.
I don't know. It's just my opinion and perception, but I'm interested to hear, what you think and what you feel about him.
Okay. All right. So kicking off the song, and like I said, there's not a ton of lyrics. There's like one long verse, a chorus, and a shorter verse, and then they just keep going through the chorus again until the song ends. So the first grouping of lyrics, and I think I'll break them up into two sections, because the first verse is fairly long and I feel like it goes in different directions. So the first lines are: once upon a time in a land called fantasy, 17 mountains stood so high. The sea surrounded them, and together they would be the only thing that ever made you cry. So that's where I'm going to stop. That's not the entire verse, but that's where I'm going to stop for now. Right off the bat, you kind of get the impression it's not kind of like a story song, but more of like a fable, or, I mean, mountains and seas, I feel like, is a clear metaphor, but for what, and I think this is where the different interpretations or different thoughts about this song can lead us in different directions, because I have that written in my notes. Mountains and the sea, a metaphor for ? And so just some things that stood out to me right off the bat. He talks about 17 mountains, so that's just, again, hearkening back to his Prince's appreciation and enjoyment of including the number 7 in his lyrics, speaking about it, and specifically in this song, 17. In just a couple years earlier, he had a song called 17 Days as the B-side. So 7, 17, these are numbers that, if you're a numerologist, you're going to find a lot of examples of this in his lyrics. So I don't put a lot of stock into, well, why 17? I think it's just a number that he liked. But I don't know, like for me, with it leading off with Once Upon a Time, like a fairy tale or a fable, like I mentioned, in a land called fantasy, and he's trying to like paint a picture of, I think, a little bit of a world where these metaphors exist, and you've got all of these mountains that can represent, I suppose, really anything, but the way I kind of think of them, especially in combination of the second verse, is more of temptations or things that humans desire, things that can potentially take our focus away from a greater calling or something that's more spiritual based. So what are some of your thoughts, Leslie, on this first section of lyrics?
One of the things that stands out to me is that it seems like, at least in this kind of earlier era, when Prince is wanting to get spiritual or deep, he goes into allegory or storytelling mode a lot, like you were mentioning. The once upon a time in a land, like he did that on the Ladder too, just on the previous album. So it makes me think about that, and then even to some extent, like Moonbeam Levels is a similar type of story, allegory in a way, or at least it's about storytelling. So I think about that. And then you were mentioning the number 17. I'm no numerologist myself either, but I Googled it, like 17 numerology. Like what did 17 mean? And who knows if he consciously knew this. I don't know if he had numerology books or what, but one source that I found says that the number 17 stands for compassion, self-confidence, strength, and spiritual consciousness. And to me, that kind of goes along with the theme of the song. Like, one interpretation of Mountains in the Sea could be high points and low points, or, as you mentioned, maybe temptation and possibly tears. But that we as spiritual beings can overcome those. So, like I said, I don't know if that was purposeful, but that was kind of a neat discovery to read about, what some consider 17 to mean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you did that, because I was always just kind of thinking like he likes 7 so much and sings about 7 so much. It's the day he was his birthday, and just using that number. Like my daughter was born on January 11th, so 11 is her number, and she's like, she's always like, okay, my favorite number is 11, and I never really looked at my birthday as being significant. It's just another number, a day of the year. So I just thought it was like an extension of that. But and to your point, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but it is interesting to know that there is one can make a correlation between 17's meaning from a numerology standpoint and some of the themes that he's addressing in this song. So it's an interesting factoid.
And he could have just needed a 3-syllable number.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. But, yeah.
I found it interesting.
But it's kind of cool to think if it was that deep, because that's what we like to do here on the show. We like to apply deep meaning sometimes, and you just wonder if it's just us or if it was really intentional. And it's kind of the fun about it, though, too. It's kind of fun. But I do like to preface any kind of statement and say, like, this is just, we're just putting that out there. We don't know, and we'll never know. So the next grouping of lines, you said the devil told you that another mountain would appear every time somebody broke your heart. He said the sea would one day overflow with all your tears, and love will always leave you lonely. All right, so with these lines now, he brings in, and this is where you kind of, if you weren't already getting a spiritual vibe from the song, the inclusion of the devil in this allegory or story certainly brings that to the forefront now. Like, you're thinking, okay, he's bringing the devil into this, so he's clearly wanting to teach us something or speak on something that he feels very strongly about. And spirituality was less overt in Purple Rain, but it's absolutely there. more overt on Around the World in a Day. And at this point, there's not a lot of that on Parade, but he does slip some in, and this is certainly, I think, an example of that. And for him to say the devil told you another mountain would appear, because if we're taking the approach that the mountains are highs, mountains and sea, high, low, temptation, tears, for the devil, and that's the reason why I originally thought more of temptation, because let's say hypothetically we've got these highs and lows in our life, everybody does. Why would the devil have to be the one to kind of approach us and say more mountains would appear, meaning highs? Why would it have to be kind of correlated to something negative or something evil? Is it because it's maybe a false high, a false peak, something that we shouldn't be chasing, even though it makes us feel good? Like that's where like some of the sins or temptations that, and we know Prince struggled a bit with those temptations of the flesh, as he talks about in the song Temptation. I mean, that's really what that song's about, is Prince the character, or Prince the musician, struggling with his temptations of the flesh. And I just thought that was interesting that, you have to think of mountains now almost as like bad things in some ways, which I wouldn't have thought of if he hadn't included this line.
Yeah, I think about this line as well. That's always kind of confused me a little bit. Why would a mountain appear every time somebody broke your heart? Like, to me, mountains have always felt majestic and, monuments to nature, right?
Mm.
But, in tradition, the devil is, a deceiver, things like that. And I think about, maybe, the song starts out where there's already 17 mountains there, right?
Yeah.
So we learn a few lines later that we've at least had 17 heartbreaks at this point in the song. And, maybe the devil is trying to deceive us and say, I know you hope that you're going to have good times, but look at this. Every time you love someone, they break your heart and another mountain pops up. It's like a memorial to past love. That could be hurtful, So that's kind of the way I view it now. I don't know if that's right, but that's the way I make sense of that line.
Yeah, I get that, because otherwise it does kind of confuse us as the listener if we're trying to figure out what the intention is by talking about that and applying the whole mountains and devil. Like, the devil is saying that we're going to see more mountains, and the whole highs and lows aspect, or the interpretation, can still apply if you think of them as maybe some of the things we chase to counter heartbreak or counter pain, whether it's alcohol or sex or drugs or whatever it is that we're chasing. A mountain. I mean, you could also even think of it from the TLC song "Waterfalls," like
right.
things that we chase after, and it's another analogy or metaphor using nature. But are they the right things? Should we be doing that? Should we be placating our desires with these unholy mountains? Maybe there's something else that we should be filling our time with, or filling our the emptiness that we have inside due to heartbreak or whatever, our losses, whatever they may be. Because there's mention here that he said the sea would one day overflow with all your tears, and love will always leave you lonely. So that those lines also are trying to, I think, like you said, the devil is a deceptor. So for him to say that and say that these are words that the devil is saying, he said, I take that to mean the devil,
right?
That love will always leave you lonely, and we don't believe that. I don't believe that Prince believes that. That's not what he's trying to say. Like, yeah, love sucks. Love hurts. Love is a bastard. No, I think he's saying the devil is telling you this, but it's not true.
Right.
Love will conquer if you just believe, which is, one of the lines leading up into the chorus. So he said the devil will one day overflow with all your tears and love will always leave you lonely. But I say it's only
Right.
mountains and the sea. Love will conquer if you just believe. So there you go. There's the kind of like the don't listen to the devil's words here. It's not true. Love will not always leave you lonely, despite of maybe what your life experience might tell you. Those 17 heartbreaks that are referred back to at the beginning doesn't mean number 18 is also going to leave you lonely. You have to keep trying. You just have to believe. So.
And even if those mountains are there because of heartbreak, look what you conquered, right? You're still here.
Yeah.
That's the way I hear that as well.
Yeah. It's like trying to uplift with those like reminders that are going to be things that try to keep you down. Heartbreak that's going to keep you down. Losses that will try to keep you down. But if you just believe, you'll get past it, you'll conquer it, and you'll move on, and you'll be stronger for it. So the chorus is then, of course, it's only mountains and the sea. There's nothing greater, you and me. Pretty simple. I think it's effective. It's easy to remember. It's in the way it's sung. It's only mountains, and so there's a lot of really kind of cool vocals going on here with Prince and Wendy and Lisa. It's just you sing it and you're not even sure like what is necessarily being meant if you're not paying attention, but it doesn't make any difference. Like it's one of those songs you could sing the chorus having absolutely no idea what he's trying to say here, but nobody cares because it's just so
it feels good.
fun. Yeah, it feels good to sing it. It's like almost like gospel in some ways. It feels like that. In terms of like the chorus itself, I mean, it's just kind of reiterating a little bit of those last lines of the first verse. Love will conquer if you just believe. There's nothing greater, you and me. Nothing greater than love. That's really what I get out of it. Do you get anything different?
Yeah, nothing really much more deep than that. Just that the power of human love, to conquer sadness or heartbreak or negative things like that. Loneliness.
Yeah. And speaking of loneliness, that's what he reiterates, that doubles down basically on talking about loneliness and how it can really bring us as the human race down if we let it, with this second verse. Once upon a time in a haystack of despair. Happiness sometimes hard to find, yeah. Africa divided, hijack in the air. It's enough to make you want to lose your mind. So
it's hard to say that without singing it.
Yeah. I thought about that. I'm like, and I've started to do that with some of the songs where you almost have to say the words at least in the same like beat as how it's being sung. Even if I'm not going to sing it like Prince, you almost have to use the same beats. It stops and starts to make it sound and flow properly. But anyway, I did my best with that one. But it is a tough one. But this verse is all about the kind of speaking to the negativity and speaking to the things that our society in 1985, 86 was presenting to those who were paying attention, at least, and the sadness and despair that he refers to. Once upon a time in a haystack of despair, which is kind of a fun way of just saying once upon a time, when basically shit sucked.
Right.
And here's why. Happiness is sometimes hard to find. Africa divided, which I think is, unless you have a different interpretation, I think that's clearly a reference to the apartheid. Do you see anything else out of that when he's saying Africa is divided?
That's probably primarily what it was, especially given that the summer of 1985 was a tipping point. In South Africa, it was white hot. Not to I mean, really, that's what it was about, right? And I think that was probably top of the news and top of mind for him. I think you're right there.
Yeah, yeah. We were still half a dozen years or so from um, apartheid being the apartheid legislation being repealed. I think that was like in the early '90s, and Mandela was still in prison at that point. So yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It was. I remember the Sun City movement. There was a music video, and there was certainly some media exposure on that in the mid '80s. So it just makes sense that that's what he's referring to. But certainly, if anybody else has any other knowledge of events in Africa that might have led him to say Africa divided, but I mean segregation, that's literally division, so
Right,
feels
exactly.
like it's the right interpretation for the moment, especially at the time. And hijacks in the air, I just did a quick like you googled 17, I'm like, oh, how many plane hijacks were there around this time? And I lost count. I mean, there was so many. I couldn't. I started to count them, and once I got past 20, and I was like, okay, 70s. How many 1970s airplane hijacks were there? And I was in the 20s before I got through 1971. And I said, okay, forget this. And I scrolled down to the 80s, and I was just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I'm like, holy shit. I was a kid at the time, so I wasn't paying that close attention to world news and things like that. But there was a lot of plane hijackings. And this is worldwide. This isn't just the United States. There was a lot of plane hijackings worldwide. One that it looked like there was one notable U.S. plane that was hijacked in the summer of '85, which I'm sure would have been all over the news in the United States, obviously. And just the fact that it was kind of a phenomenon, for lack of a better term. This was a way to get political factions to get attention, and terrorist type events. And almost like anytime you boarded a plane in a foreign land, you almost kind of had to worry a little bit about that. That was a real thing, a real concern.
I think you're right. If we think about the time where he would have been writing these lyrics, if Wendy and Lisa brought him the demo music in October, November '85, he would have probably had top of mind things from the summer and fall of that year, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's why I was thinking, apartheid, South Africa, reaching a fever pitch that summer, which it did, I think in like June, July. And then TWA Flight 847 was, I think, June 14th of '85. And it was into that fall, still top of the news. Investigation and prosecution and all kinds of things like that. So that's, like we mentioned at the beginning, those two events have always been my assumption of what this verse was about. Of course, may not be an exhaustive list, but just knowing what would have been in the news, I think that's likely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did look up Sun City quick, and it was written in '85, and that was the protest song that, the institutional racism that was occurring in South Africa around that time. So yeah, it all lines out in terms of timing for this song to be written, and to use those two representations to speak of just kind of like the despair that he's trying to portray here, and some of the reasons why people would be kind of down around this time, just in general. Like what's the stuff that's going on in our society in 1885 that makes us worry, that makes us concerned, that makes us sad, knowing that there's people dying, and there's all these events in the world that just don't feel like they're just not right, and then those of us with scruples know that they're not right. What can we do about it? It makes you want to lose your mind, because you feel like you're in some ways helpless to prevent some of these events from happening. And I like the fact that, well, like if this would have been the same kind of structure as the first verse, that he would have followed this up maybe with some more upliftment, but he doesn't. He just goes straight back into the chorus, because really the chorus is intended to be the uplifting moment of the song. You don't really have to add more lyrics to uplift and to get you to the listener to take that next step. Like, here's the stuff that sucks, but guess what? It's only mountains and the sea. Love will conquer if you just believe, which, maybe feels a little trite in some ways when you're talking about apartheid and plane hijackings, to just say if you love will conquer if you just believe. It doesn't really fix some of those situations, but maybe, if nothing else, it puts the listener, in a different frame of mind where they feel like they can make a difference in some of these other situations. Like, if you're happy and you have that love in your heart, you can share that love with others, so you can be a good person.
I do think it's clever that he uses the needle in a haystack analogy, right? Happiness is that needle that's hard to find in the haystack. But the implication is
that is a good analogy.
The implication is that it's still worth looking for, right? We shouldn't fall into despair and lose our mind, because, like you said, that is when he transitions back into, but I say it's only mountains and the sea. Like, it's still worth looking for happiness and perpetuating happiness and love. It's the way I hear that.
Yeah, and it's a really good message overall, especially as we struggle here in early 2021 with, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. It's not ending anytime soon, in the United States at least. So there's probably a lot of depression, I would imagine, in our country at this time. People who are depressed about the situation, the pandemic, maybe situation with our country being feeling like it's a divided country from a political standpoint. There's still reasons. Maybe we're not all thinking about hijacks and apartheid in South Africa anymore, but we have our own issues in 2020, 2021 that we're dealing with, that, our haystack of despair as a society is pretty big haystack, I would think, at this point. I don't want to try to bring us down and be depressing, but it's a tough time right now. We're all, it's a tough time in this world. And I'm specifically speaking about our country when I'm talking about, the political aspects of it, but I know that it's not, other countries are dealing with this as well. It's not just the United States. We're not unique to have a divided kind of country, politically speaking. So insert other concerns that are causing maybe despair and making that haystack seem really tall. But that needle of love, needle of happiness, is worth looking for. And that this song is a great reason. And as you mentioned in your reference to Elephants and Flowers and Mountains just being songs that uplift and make you happy if you're feeling down, it's because the lyrics are telling us to. The music, even if with no lyrics, the music is enough, I think. But then you throw these lyrics on top of it, and it's all great. It's all golden. It's doing exactly what it's intended to do from a lyrical standpoint and a musical standpoint, and that's uplift and make you happy.
Absolutely.
It's only mountains and the sea. There's nothing greater, you and me. And we get a musical breakdown at this point, and there's really no additional new lyrics, but this part is fun because you've got, guitars and drums on the one. That I don't know. I can't not repeat that and say those lines along with the song.
And maybe like a drum hit on your steering wheel, right? If you happen to be driving. That's what I do.
Yeah. I do that too. Or, and then the next one that is fun is when, I think in the video it shows like Lisa doing it. I can't, when they're just speaking, I have a hard time telling Wendy and Lisa's speaking voices apart unless I'm in a song. Like if I hear them talking just like on a podcast or something like that on the radio, I can tell them apart. But in the song, it's hard to tell because they're kind of like yelling at Bobby on the drum. And then you see Lisa pointing to him in the video, and I do that too. I do the pointing, even though I'm literally pointing to nobody. It's just the action of pointing towards the drummer.
It's funny. A couple years ago, I was at the Paisley Five and Dime summer party that they have. Shout out to Eric and
Well, that
Angela.
sounds like fun.
Yeah, and Bobby was the guest speaker.
Oh man.
And
Cool.
and the coolest thing, like I always have this memory now, ever since that event, when that song came on, getting to yell Bobby on the drummer and point to him, and catch his wife Vicky's eye, like that was so much fun. That was such a cool
Yeah.
moment. But yeah, I
Oh,
remember
man.
that now.
That sounds awesome. I think I miss those kind of events, like being able to
Yes.
attend those types of events. Yeah, I had a Paisley Park, Minneapolis trip canceled last summer. I think a lot of people did, which bummed me out to no end because I was really looking forward to it. Okay. Anyways, I just climbed the top of my haystack of despair, so I got to get through this. It's only mountains.
We'll
and
find the
sea.
needle next time we're at Paisley together.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Let's do
And
it.
another thing I like, I mean, just again, it's only mountains and the sea, and the girls say Prince adds that little additional line in there, and then because then he lets Wendy and Lisa do their thing. There's nothing greater, and the girls say, because we all hear the girls, we all know that Wendy and Lisa are singing the song, but he just wants to make sure that he gives them a shout out because guitars and drums on the one, so guitars. And I think at that scene when he says guitars and drums on the one is when Miko gets right up in front, or Prince is standing there, and or, I don't know, I don't remember, but I know Miko gets like right up in front of the camera. Hey, welcome to the band, Miko. We've seen you in the background there for a while, but hey, come on up. And Brown Mark does the same thing. At one point, he brings like the ones who aren't stuck behind drum kit or keyboards or piano, but then Wendy doesn't get to. She just sits on the Lisa's piano the whole time, and with her, and she's kind of like got her back to us for most of the video, if I recall. Every once in a while, she'll peek her head around, or turn her head back to sing a line and have us see her. Just a cool video.
Love it.
I know this is a lyric podcast, so nobody can see it with me, but come on, it's available anywhere. It's on. Rent the movie if you don't own it. Rent it. Pull it up on YouTube. Watch it. You'll have a great time because there's so much to enjoy about it. And of course, you got to talk about Prince and his hat. I mean,
The hat, yes.
the hat.
I mean, Under the Cherry Moon Parade is my favorite Prince era. Aesthetically, I just love it. But that hat is incredible.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, that really brings us to the end of the lyrical dissection with the song. Like I said, there isn't a lot of lyrics. There's the lyrics that we get. If you want to try to interpret them, if you want to make the effort, they certainly lend themselves to potential variety of interpretations, which is cool. They also make sure that you can apply them. They're applicable. They're not so specific that that they are going to turn off a portion or segment of the population because they can't be applied to everybody. They're universal. So I think that's a great songwriting technique, even if he's talking about, even if you're not religious, I mean, even if you're not religious, if you don't really believe in God, it doesn't really matter because the idea is greater than that. The idea is more about finding that happiness, finding that joy, and then specifically you can, if you want to, you can find love, and love for another person, love for yourself, love for society at large, fellow man and woman and child. So find that love and find that needle in that haystack and climb that mountain. Do you have any additional thoughts that you wanted to touch on, Leslie, in regards to mountains?
No, I think we covered it. Like I said, this is one that is on my, when I'm sad, I put this on and it does the trick. So if anyone's facing that, like you said, in these, as we all keep saying lately, unprecedented times, this song will cures what ails you, as they say.
Absolutely. Okay, well, and also if you have an extra 7 minutes, throw on the 12-inch version, the 10-minute version.
Yes.
Because it's great. You just kind of dance the whole time that it's on, and if nothing else, it'll give you a nice workout.
Definitely.
So thanks again for being on the show, Leslie. I appreciate your time and your thoughts on this song. Is there anything that you want to mention about where people can find you on social media?
Sure. I actually have recently changed my social media handles. I probably shouldn't do that. I need to brand myself a little bit better. But currently on Twitter, I'm Shockadelica78. And on Instagram, it's Leslie, LESLIE_3121. And happy to interact with anyone. And of course, you and I are both on Discord. So happy to have a conversation there as well.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, this has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. Thanks for joining me again, Leslie. And you can find my show, just type in Press Rewind Pod or Press Rewind Podcast, social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And I've got a blog, pressrewind.net, where I try to post updates to episodes as I work on them. And I love this song. Listen to it. Until next time, goodbye.